It was a moment in time where I realized that I was grateful for everything that had happened. I'm nervous, excited. Okay. Everything is about to change. This is my tell-all. This is the wild way home, because I didn't have anybody when I was going through everything that I've been through. And I wanted to create a home, to create a sacred space for women who are hurting, for women who are in toxic or abusive situations, for women who have abandoned themselves, who have lost themselves, for women who feel numb, for women who are burned out. I wanted to create a sacred space for women to rise and for them to feel empowered and to find themselves and fully enjoy life and thrive again, because we all deserve that. And there was a time where I didn't think I would ever feel joy again. I thought it just wasn't for me. I thought I was different. And I can't wait to start sharing my most vulnerable stories, what I would call secrets, the things that I hid from the world for so long, because I know it's going to make a huge difference for so many people. And if you're listening to this, and if you have something that you're going through and it's really freaking hard, I see you, and I've been there, and I was you, and I am you. And that's what this is for. This is for you. Before I start, I am not my story. A story does not define you. An experience does not define you. But the lessons that I've learned and the experiences that I've had have given me an incredible opportunity to share what I've gone through, what my lessons are. And I think it allows me to now be in a position where I can give them support and I can be their voice, especially when they feel alone. So with that being said, let's start from the very beginning. I've been in one definitively abusive relationship, and I've been in multiple other relationships with men who had anger issues or men who had a hard time controlling their reactions, but rarely until the abusive one was it ever directed at me. Now, I want to be very clear about what this podcast is and what this podcast is not. This podcast is about the lessons, about the experiences, about the self-growth, the expansion, the woman that I've had to become, and the journey that I have been on, and my ability to look back and reflect and pull lessons from what I've gone through in order to help other women move forward. It is not a place where I'm going to talk negatively about people and throw them under the bus. And it's also not meant to wallow in victimhood. You are not your story. I am not my story. And I think that is something that is so important. If you sit in the story for too long, you become the story and you never move forward, and then you stay stuck. And my goal for you, no matter what part of the journey that you're in right now, is I want you to keep moving forward, and I want you to have the best, most beautiful, happy fucking life, because you deserve it. Everything that I'm doing is to help sisters rise, because that's what this is. It's sisterhood. I can identify with every woman who has gone through abuse, who has gone through self-abandonment, who has been burned out, who has taken the hard road, who has neglected herself, who has become numb, who feels nothing, who lacks joy, who just wants to love life again. I see you, I was you, and I am you. And this is for you. I do have a disclaimer that I will never throw anybody under the bus. I will protect people's identities and their anonymity, because they are human too. We are all learning, we are all growing, we are all expanding and learning our lessons. And my hope is that just like the relationships that I was in, I pulled lessons from about myself and about how I can be better. My hope is that those people have begun journeys where they are becoming better and they took something away from the relationship as well. I may change names, I may change dates and timelines, and places in order to protect those people who have been in my life. I am deeply grateful for every relationship that I have been in because it led me here. I have a tattoo. I don't know if you can see it, a morphagi. I got that after a couple of relationships ago. And it was a moment in time where I realized that I was grateful for everything that had happened because it led me to that moment. And I hope that you get to that point too. Once you accept what has happened and you sit in the present moment and you recognize what an absolute blessing it is to be in this present moment and be able to have all of the lessons that were provided to you in order to move forward, you will be grateful. So this is where it all starts. I was in an abusive relationship. There was gaslighting. There was belittling. I felt minimized all the time. I felt like my needs didn't matter. I would bring up my needs and it would cause a big fight. And I would be told why it was my fault and why I'm too sensitive and why I wasn't thinking about the other person, why I had to go and have emotions that attacked them. And for a long time, I tried approaching the situation differently. I tried saying things differently, and then I stopped bringing things up altogether because that was the safer thing to do. That was the thing that looked out for them. That was the thing that avoided the fight until it didn't. It just came up in other avenues. And then I was in a relationship where I didn't feel heard. I didn't feel cared about deeply. I didn't feel seen. With the gaslighting, I ultimately began questioning reality because my memory was frequently questioned. I was confused a lot of the time. I remembered things differently. So I began to write things down in the moment when it was happening. I would get my phone out, I would type it down. And that's how my digital journal started. That's how all of this began. I started documenting every single thing that was happening for months, for years. And documenting it all, while it was a coping strategy for being in an emotionally abusive relationship, it became something to validate me that I wasn't crazy, that I wasn't confused, that these things happened. I would use that to remind myself of the things that were said, of the things that happened, of how a situation started, when later I was explained to how it was my fault and it made sense. I had to look back at my perspective and what I had written down. Now, I will say that research shows that we only remember 60% of events. Our memories are very poor historians, and the longer you are away from an event that's happened, the poorer of a historian that you become. Now, I'm not saying that my story is not my truth, but there are two sides to every story. And the deeper that I've gone into self-development, I've recognized that you can only control yourself, your thoughts and your actions. While I have my stories, I also realize that I have my triggers. I have my reactions and my responses to what other people do and say, and that we all look at the world through the filter of our own wounds. I want to make that known because if you are going through this journey, if you are doing this, you have to know that initially, maybe it was because of the situation that you were in, and maybe in the beginning you think it's about them, but it's really about you. And it's about you healing and becoming the woman that you were always meant to be. So like I said, I started my journal. First, it would just be the situations that I was in, and I would document exactly what was happening. And then later I would pull it up again and I would reflect on it. I would put all of my thoughts in there. I'm a very writing person. That's how I understand what's going on in my brain. That's how I mind map everything that's happening and how I can make sense of it all, because it was all just chaos and confusion, and I had a lot of self-doubt. And then it became a list of events that I would look at to give myself the validation of, this is not right, Caitlin. This isn't okay. And now that list, these journals, now all of this has become the roadmap and the everything that I'm sharing with you. That is now the Wild Way Home podcast. My name is Caitlin. I'm glad you found this video, and welcome to the podcast. I think when most people think about abusive relationships, they think about bruises and hitting and violence, and they think it's all the time. And maybe you think of somebody who's an alcoholic at home, and it's constant screaming and constant hitting, and it's these women with bruises, and that's a portion of it. But a lot of the times it's not like that. Not everybody is bad all the time. That's how you end up in relationships, because you see the good in people, and because you have good times, and you build good memories, and you build good emotions. What happened with me was slowly. First, it started with raised voices, and then the belittling, and then the gaslighting, and the making you question your reality, and then the blocking your way to leave, and then things getting thrown. Later, it turned into public humiliation, whether it was just a couple of people or we were in front of a crowd of over 100. And then finally, it was getting grabbed or hit. And when all of that happens, it's always your fault. It was always my fault. And they make it make sense. And it's a very slippery slope, because when it happens, and when you allow it, or when you're in shock and then you allow it to happen again, now you're tolerating it. And that's how it escalates. It's a little at a time. The line keeps getting moved. And then when something gets worse, so it went from yelling and belittling to throwing things across the room, well, at that point, I felt like I couldn't complain about the yelling, the name calling, the cussing, because I had already tolerated it for so long. So why complain now? And now the thing to complain about is the things being thrown across the room, or the things being thrown at me. And that's the way that it feels, is that you can't complain about things because you've already tolerated this. Why didn't you just complain about it before? I remember some of the things that were said to me so crystal clearly. There was one time in the kitchen. So this is the thing that I think changed everything for me after everything that I had heard. It was, "Those are your dishes, bitch." I was like, wow, this person does not respect me. And even before that, there was constantly, "Shut the fuck up, go fuck yourself. You're a cunt. You're a spoiled, rotten fucking brat. You're a disgusting human. Go fuck yourself." Those are all things that I heard over and over. And I knew they weren't right. And I questioned it. Even when I got called a disgusting human, I was like, what? And I remember in that conversation, he was like, "Yeah, hasn't so-and-so realized how disgusting you are?" I was like, "What do you mean? I'm not disgusting." And he said, "You leave your hair all over the place, and you leave socks by the bed. You're fucking disgusting." If those are the worst things that I do, cool. I'll own it. I like to take my socks off before I get in bed. But I know I'm not alone. I know that I'm not the only one who has dealt with this. And that's why I want to shine a light on it in a way that I don't think anyone ever has. But I hope that many will. I'm going to share my stories. I'm going to tell all. I'm going to describe in detail what happened and reflect on it. I'm going to tell you the stories and then the lessons that I've learned. I'm going to tell you how I've grown as a woman, how I'm grateful for everything that happened to me, how that led me here in this seat talking to you. I'm going to reflect on what was happening inside of me and why I didn't leave, and the things that I need to work on and my limiting self-beliefs, so that if you recognize any of them, hopefully you can work on those yourself. I have in common a lot with women who have been in abusive relationships, but the line stops there. I am not my story, and you are not yours. I will say that over and over and over again because I want you to believe it. Once you walk through this door, it's about self-growth. It's about becoming the best human that you can be and acknowledging the patterns that you've had that maybe you never were aware of, or that you never realized, or that you never cared enough to work on. And maybe realizing how far back that goes and addressing that and healing that, not just in this relationship, but in all of them, and adjusting the wounded lens through which you're looking at life so that you can see more clearly. Because my outlook on life since I've begun this self-development and expansion process and understanding my wounds, my triggers, my unhealthy behavioral patterns in relationships, I've changed. So once you walk through the door, it's about you. It's not about him anymore. And it's about learning to hold and to heal the darkest parts of yourself that you didn't ever think you'd shine light on. You're going to heal the parts that tolerated it, that contributed to it, and that ultimately stayed in it. So if you're ready for the ride, jump in and let's take the wild way home.